In the year 2387, humanity discovered they were not the first intelligent species to walk among the stars. They were not even the second, or the third. Ancient ruins scattered across dozens of worlds told a different story, one of a galaxy once ruled by beings so advanced that lesser civilizations worshipped them as gods. The Draknari, as xenoarchaeologists dubbed them, had vanished 10,000 years ago, leaving behind only whispers of impossible technology and legends that spoke of fire that could burn through dimensions and scales that could deflect the heat of dying suns. Most believed the Draknari were myth, their supposed achievements exaggerated by primitive alien minds trying to make sense of natural phenomena. But Dr. Sarah Chen knew better. Hidden in her personal vault aboard the research vessel Prometheus lay a single artifact that defied every law of physics humanity thought they understood, a scale no bigger than her palm that generated its own gravity field and hummed with energy that their most sensitive instruments couldn't fully measure. The scale had led her team to Valthera, a dead world at the edge of the Andromeda Spiral, where ancient star charts suggested the last great Draknari stronghold once stood. What they found there would either elevate humanity to the pantheon of galactic powers, or destroy them in their hubris to claim the inheritance of dragons. The Prometheus dropped out of hyperspace with a violent shudder that sent unsecured equipment tumbling across the bridge. Captain Marcus Webb gripped his command chair as the ship's artificial gravity generators struggled to compensate for the spatial distortions surrounding Valthera. Through the main viewport, the dead world hung like a gray pustule against the backdrop of foreign stars, its surface scarred by massive impact craters and twisted metal formations that jutted from the ground like the ribs of some colossal beast. "Scans are coming in now, Captain," reported Lieutenant Torres from the sensor station. Her voice carried a note of confusion that immediately put Webb on edge. "Sir, these readings don't make sense. The planet's mass is approximately 30% higher than it should be based on visual size estimates. There are also some unusual energy signatures emanating from the northern hemisphere." Dr. Sarah Chen pushed herself up from where she had been thrown against the communications console, her dark hair disheveled and her brown eyes bright with anticipation despite the rough arrival. At 42, she had spent the better part of 2 decades studying xenoarchaeology, and her gut told her they were on the verge of something extraordinary. The artifact in her personal vault had been resonating more strongly the closer they got to Valthera, its harmonic frequency increasing to almost painful levels. "Define unusual," Chen said, moving to stand beside Torres at the sensor array. The young lieutenant's fingers danced across holographic displays that showed the planet's surface in stunning detail. "The energy signatures are consistent with active technology, but they're unlike anything in our databases. The patterns suggest a form of quantum field manipulation that's theoretically impossible with current understanding of physics." Torres looked up at Chen with wide eyes. "Doctor, if these readings are accurate, someone or something down there is manipulating spacetime itself." Captain Webb stood and straightened his uniform, his weathered face set in grim lines. At 55, he had seen enough of the galaxy's mysteries to know when his crew was walking into danger. How long since the last confirmed contact from this system? Historical records show the last alien transmission from Valthera was detected 8,000 years ago, Chen replied, consulting her personal datapad. "But, Captain, the Draknari were said to have technology that could function autonomously for millennia. What we're seeing could be the remnants of their final stronghold." Webb studied the planet below them with the calculating gaze of a man who had survived 3 decades of deep space exploration. The twisted metal formations were too regular to be natural, too massive to be the work of any known civilization. Some of the structures rose nearly 50 kilometers into the thin atmosphere, their surfaces covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and flow when viewed through the ship's telescopic arrays. "Chief Engineer Rodriguez, what's our status?" Webb called toward the engineering station. "Hyperspace motivators are offline pending a full diagnostic," came the heavily accented reply. "Those spatial distortions played hell with our quantum containment fields. I need at least 12 hours to run full checks before we can risk another jump." Chen felt her pulse quicken. 12 hours was more than enough time to conduct preliminary surveys of the surface. "Captain, I recommend we launch probe sequences immediately. The energy patterns down there could be unstable. If they're linked to failing Draknari technology, we might be looking at the last chance to study it before it goes dark forever. Or before it explodes and takes half the system with it," Webb muttered. But he was already moving toward his command console. Torres, launch a full spread of survey probes. I want detailed scans of those energy sources. Rodriguez, get a team working on emergency jump protocols in case we need to leave in a hurry. The bridge hummed with activity as the crew carried out their orders. Through the viewport, Vailthora continued its slow rotation, revealing more of the mysterious structures that dotted its surface. Chen found herself drawn to one formation in particular, a massive spire that seemed to be constructed from some kind of crystalline material that caught and reflected light in impossible ways. First probe is approaching the northern energy signature, Torres announced. Telemetry looks good. Beginning detailed scans now. The main screen switched to show the probe's perspective as it descended through Vailthora's atmosphere. The air was thin but breathable according to the readings, with trace amounts of exotic particles that didn't appear in any standard atmospheric composition charts. As the probe drew closer to the surface, the true scale of the structures became apparent. "My God," whispered Navigator Singh, his usual composure cracking. "Those aren't buildings. They're machines." The twisted metal formations were indeed mechanical in nature, but unlike anything in human experience. Massive gears the size of city blocks rotated slowly in complex patterns, their movements synchronized with pulses of energy that rippled across the planet's surface. Conduits thick as subway tunnels snaked between the mechanisms, carrying streams of liquid fire that glowed with inner light. "Energy readings are off the charts," Torres reported, her voice tight with excitement and fear. "The quantum field fluctuations are increasing. It's like the whole planet is one giant machine that's slowly coming online." Chen's heart hammered against her ribs. The artifact in her vault was now vibrating so strongly that she could feel it through the ship's deck plating. Whatever technology the Draknari had left behind, it was responding to their presence. "Captain, I need to get down there. This could be the discovery of the millennium." "Absolutely not," Webb replied firmly. "We don't know what we're dealing with. For all we know, our arrival just triggered some kind of automated defense system." His words proved prophetic as alarms suddenly began blaring throughout the ship. The tactical display lit up with new contacts rising from the planet's surface, sleek vessels that moved with impossible grace through the atmosphere. They were clearly not designed for any species humanity had encountered. The ships were long and serpentine, their hulls covered in scales that shimmered with the same energy patterns they had detected from orbit. Multiple contacts ascending from planetary surface, Torres shouted over the alarm klaxons. "Count is. Jesus, there have to be at least 50 of them. They're not responding to hails." Webb's military training kicked in instantly. "Battle stations. Bring us about and prepare for evasive maneuvers. All hands, this is not a drill." The Prometheus was a research vessel, not a warship, but she carried enough defensive armament to protect herself from pirates and hostile fauna. Her plasma batteries swiveled to track the approaching vessels while her particle shields flickered to life around the hull. "They're not targeting us," Torres called out, her voice puzzled. "The ships are taking up position around the planet, but their weapon systems appear to be offline. It's almost like they're escorting us." Chen stared at the tactical display with growing understanding. "They're not attacking us. They're protecting the planet. This must be some kind of automated guardian system left by the Draknari." One of the alien vessels broke formation and approached the Prometheus with deliberate, measured movements. As it drew closer, the ship's details became visible on the main screen. The vessel was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure, its scaled hull rippling with patterns of light that seemed almost alive. At its prow, a massive crystalline array pulsed with the same energy signatures they had detected from the surface. "Incoming transmission," Torres announced. "The signal it's not being sent through normal communication channels. It's coming directly through our quantum field generators." On screen, Webb ordered, though he kept his hand hovering over the weapons control. The main display flickered and resolved into an image that made everyone on the bridge gasp. A figure stood before them that was unmistakably reptilian but walked upright with the bearing of ancient nobility. Its scales were deep emerald shot through with veins of gold, and its eyes held an intelligence that seemed to pierce through the screen directly into their souls. When it spoke, its voice resonated with harmonics that bypassed the ears entirely and spoke directly to the mind. Children of distant stars, the being said, its mental voice carrying overtones of vast age and profound sadness. We have waited long for one such as you to arrive. I am Keeper Thyraxis, guardian of the final sanctum. Your species shows promise, but you walk in shadows cast by giants. The time of testing approaches. Chen stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. We come in peace, Keeper. We seek knowledge of your people, the Draknari. We wish to learn from your achievements. The Keeper's massive head tilted slightly, studying Chen with eyes that held depths of experience spanning millennia. Knowledge is earned, not given freely. Your kind possesses something that should not exist in lesser hands, a fragment of the core. How did you acquire that which was thought lost? Chen's mind raced. The Keeper had to be referring to the artifact in her vault. We found it among ruins on a world called Zirian Prime. We've been using it to trace the paths of your people across the galaxy. Zirian. The Keeper's expression grew thoughtful. The final gift of Archon Drachmaris before the Great Silence claimed our civilization. That fragment was meant as a key, young seeker. A key to unlock the inheritance we prepared for those who might follow in our path. Webb stepped beside Chen, his military bearing evident even in the face of such an otherworldly encounter. What kind of inheritance? Power beyond imagining, Thyraxis replied, spreading arms that revealed wings of translucent membrane stretched between elongated fingers. Technology that could reshape worlds or unmake them entirely. The choice of how such gifts are used falls to those who prove themselves worthy of the burden. The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of ship systems. Chen could feel the weight of history pressing down on them. Humanity stood at a crossroads that could define their future among the stars. The Draknari had left them a test, and their response would determine whether they joined the ranks of galactic powers or suffered the same fate as countless other species who had reached too far beyond their grasp. What must we do to prove ourselves? Chen asked, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. Keeper Thyraxis smiled, revealing rows of teeth like polished obsidian. Descend to the sanctum below and face the trials left by my masters. But, know this, the path ahead will demand sacrifice. 3 among your number must undergo the joining to activate the ancient mechanisms. Only then will the true inheritance be revealed. The joining? Webb interjected. What exactly does that entail? Transformation, Thyraxis replied cryptically. Your forms will be reshaped to interface with Draknari technology. The process is irreversible. Those who accept the joining will become something new, no longer fully human yet not truly Draknari. They will be bridges between worlds, guardians of power that could reshape the galaxy. Chen exchanged glances with Webb. The implications were staggering. Access to Draknari technology could advance human civilization by thousands of years, but the cost would be 3 members of their crew. How do we know you're telling the truth? How do we know this isn't some elaborate trap? The Keeper's expression grew somber. Because, young seeker, we made the same choice long ago. The Draknari were not the first to walk this path. We inherited our power from the Vorthak, who claimed it from the Zephyrians before them. The galaxy is littered with the bones of civilizations who sought power without wisdom. We survived because we chose carefully who would bear the burden of transformation. Through the ship's sensors, Chen could see the Guardian vessels maintaining their protective formation around the planet. Massive though they were, there was something almost sad about their eternal vigil. These were the last guardians of a dead civilization, preserving knowledge and power for inheritors who might never come. I need to see the fragment, Thyraxis continued. If you truly carry one of the core fragments, it will resonate with the planetary network. Only then can the sanctum be opened. Chen looked to Webb, who nodded grimly. She made her way to her personal vault and retrieved the artifact with trembling hands. The moment she brought it onto the bridge, the entire ship seemed to hum with sympathetic vibrations. The fragment itself was no longer merely warm to the touch, it now pulsed with inner fire that cast dancing shadows on the walls. On the screen, Keeper Thyraxis leaned forward, his ancient eyes widening with something approaching awe. By the first flame, that is a prime fragment. One of only 7 ever created. Young ones, do you understand what you possess? Enlighten us, Webb said dryly, though Chen could see the tension in his shoulders. A prime fragment contains the compressed knowledge and power of an entire Draknari world mind. In the right hands, it could terraform dead worlds, extend consciousness across galactic distances, or serve as the core of weapons that could shatter star systems. Thyraxis paused, his expression growing deadly serious. In the wrong hands, it could unmake reality itself. The weight of the revelation settled over the bridge like a physical force. Chen stared at the innocuous-looking artifact in her hands, struggling to reconcile its simple appearance with the cosmic significance Thyraxis had revealed. Why was it left on Zirian Prime? Why not keep it safe with the rest of your technology? Because Archon Drakmaris believed that power without struggle breeds weakness, Thyraxis explained. He scattered the prime fragments across the galaxy, each hidden in locations that would test the worth of those who sought them. You have proven your dedication by following the path this far. Now you must prove your wisdom. Webb studied the tactical display where the Guardian ships continued their watchful patrol. Assuming we agree to this trial, what guarantee do we have that we'll be allowed to leave afterward? None, Thyraxis replied with blunt honesty. The trials are designed to reshape more than flesh, they will test the very essence of who you are. Those who emerge from the sanctum will not be the same beings who entered. Whether the transformation proves to be a blessing or a curse depends entirely on the choices you make within. Chen felt the fragment pulse in her hands, its rhythm matching her heartbeat. Somewhere in the depths of her scientific mind, she knew they were standing at one of those pivotal moments that defined the course of history. Humanity had spent centuries reaching for the stars, only to discover they were children playing with toys compared to the civilizations that had come before. Now they were being offered the chance to claim their inheritance, but the price was higher than anyone had imagined. We need time to consider this, Webb said finally. This decision affects more than just our crew. It could change the entire future of our species. Thyraxis nodded slowly. Time you shall have, but not unlimited time. The planetary systems that maintain the sanctum grow weaker with each passing cycle. If the trials are not completed within 7 of your days, the sanctum will seal itself forever and the knowledge within will be lost. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Outside, the Guardian ships continued their eternal patrol while Veilthra turned slowly beneath them, its surface now clearly visible as a vast network of interconnected machines that spanned continents. Chen sank into a nearby chair, still clutching the fragment as her mind raced through the implications of everything they had learned. Captain, we can't walk away from this. The technological advancement alone could solve every major problem facing humanity: energy crises, resource shortages, even the expansion into new galactic regions. And if we make the wrong choices in these trials, we could end up dead or worse, Webb countered. I won't risk my crew on the promises of an alien AI that's been isolated for 8,000 years. But what if we're not risking them? Chen pressed. What if we're offering them the chance to become something greater? The Keeper said those who undergo the joining become bridges between worlds. Maybe that's exactly what humanity needs. The debate that followed would rage through the ship for hours as word of the encounter spread through the crew. Some saw it as the opportunity of a lifetime, while others viewed it as an elaborate death trap. But, in the end, the decision would come down to 3 individuals willing to sacrifice their humanity for the chance to elevate their entire species. As the hours passed and the deadline grew closer, Chen found herself standing again at the viewport, watching the ancient machines of Veilthra turning in their endless dance. Somewhere below lay knowledge that could transform human civilization forever. The only question was whether they possessed the courage to claim it. The shuttle bay of the Prometheus hummed with nervous energy as the crew prepared for the most dangerous mission in human history. Dr. Sarah Chen stood before a mirror in her quarters, adjusting the environmental suit that might be the last piece of human technology she ever wore. The prime fragment hung in a specially constructed harness around her neck, its pulsing glow visible even through the protective casing they had built for it. She had volunteered for the joining without hesitation, driven by the same curiosity that had led her to become a xenoarchaeologist in the first place. But she wasn't the only one willing to make the ultimate sacrifice for humanity's future. Chief Engineer Miguel Rodriguez had stepped forward an hour after the initial debate, claiming that his technical expertise would be essential for understanding Draknari technology. The third volunteer had surprised everyone. Commander Elena Vasquez, the ship's tactical officer and Webb's second-in-command, had announced her intention to undergo the transformation with the calm professionalism that had made her one of the most respected officers in the fleet. When Webb had questioned her decision, she had simply stated that someone with military experience needed to ensure the power they were claiming could be properly defended. Now the three of them stood in the shuttle bay, surrounded by the rest of the crew who had come to see them off. The atmosphere was somber yet electric with anticipation. No one spoke of the possibility that they might never see their friends and colleagues again, but the thought hung heavy in the recycled air. Captain Webb approached Chen, his weathered face etched with concern and pride in equal measure. "Doctor, are you absolutely certain about this? Even if the transformation is successful, we have no idea what you'll become." Chen met his gaze steadily. "Captain, 30 years ago my grandmother told me that the greatest discoveries require the greatest risks." She was talking about her work developing the first hyperspace motivators, but I think the principle applies here too. If we want to join the galactic community as equals rather than children, someone has to take the leap. Rodriguez nodded firmly, his engineer's pragmatism evident even in this moment of uncertainty. "Besides, Captain, the potential technological gains are beyond calculation. Imagine what we could accomplish with the ability to manipulate spacetime at will. No more energy crises, no more resource wars, no more wondering if we're alone in hostile territory." Vasquez remained silent, but her posture radiated the same determined confidence that had carried her through countless dangerous missions. At 38, she was the youngest person ever to achieve her rank, and Webb trusted her judgment more than anyone else on the ship. "The shuttle is prepped and ready," reported Lieutenant Torres from the pilot station. She would be accompanying the volunteers down to the surface but would remain with the shuttle while they entered the sanctum. "Surface conditions are stable, and the Guardian ships are maintaining a clear corridor to the landing site Keeper Thyraxis designated." Webb looked out through the shuttle bay's force field at the alien world below. Vaelthera had continued its slow rotation, revealing new vistas of impossible architecture and technology that defied human understanding. Massive crystalline structures caught and redirected the light from the system's twin stars, creating patterns of brilliance that seemed almost artistic in their complexity. "Remember," Webb said, addressing the three volunteers, "you're not just representing the Prometheus crew. You're speaking for all of humanity. Whatever decisions you make down there will echo through history for centuries to come." Chen nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders like a physical force. "We understand, Captain. We won't let our species down." The shuttle launched with minimal fanfare, carrying its precious cargo toward a destiny none of them could fully comprehend. As they descended through Vaelthera's atmosphere, the true scale of the planet's mechanical nature became apparent. What they had taken for mountain ranges from orbit revealed themselves to be massive computational arrays, their surfaces covered in patterns that shifted and flowed like liquid thought. "Energy readings are increasing exponentially," Torres reported from the pilot's seat. "The entire planet appears to be responding to our approach. I'm seeing activation patterns spreading outward from our destination like ripples in a pond." Through the shuttle's viewport, Chen watched ancient machinery stirring to life after millennia of dormancy. Towers that had stood silent and dark began to pulse with inner light, while underground conduits carried streams of energy that painted the landscape in shades of blue and gold. The sight was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. There, Rodriguez pointed toward a massive complex that rose from the planet's surface like a metallic mountain. "That has to be the sanctum." The structure was unlike anything in human architecture, composed of interlocking spirals that seemed to twist through dimensions beyond the normal three. At its base, a circular platform awaited them, surrounded by guardian pylons that hummed with contained power. As the shuttle settled onto the landing pad, Chen felt the fragment respond with increasing intensity, its harmonics creating an almost musical resonance that she could feel in her bones. The moment they stepped onto Vaelthera's surface, the difference from any human world was immediately apparent. The gravity was slightly heavier than Earth normal, but the air itself seemed charged with potential energy that made every breath feel electric. The sky overhead was a deep purple shot through with streams of light that connected the various mechanical complexes across the planetary surface. "Atmospheric readings are within acceptable parameters for human physiology," Torres confirmed, consulting her scanner. But, there are energy fields here that our instruments can't properly classify. It's like standing inside a massive machine that's slowly waking up. Keeper Thyraxis materialized before them without warning, his massive form shimmering into existence as if he had simply stepped through the fabric of space itself. Up close, he was even more imposing than he had appeared on the communication screen. His scales caught and reflected the light from the sky in patterns that seemed almost hypnotic, while his eyes held depths that spoke of unimaginable age and experience. "Welcome to the final sanctum," the keeper intoned, his mental voice resonating through their minds with harmonic overtones that human vocal cords could never produce. "You have chosen to walk the path of transformation. Before we proceed, you must understand what awaits you within." Chen stepped forward, the fragment around her neck now glowing so brightly that it was visible even through the protective casing. "We're ready to hear whatever you need to tell us, Keeper." Thyraxis gestured toward the towering structure behind him with a sweep of his wing. "The sanctum contains 3 trials, each designed to test a different aspect of your worthiness. The trial of mind will challenge your intelligence and wisdom. The trial of spirit will test your dedication to ideals greater than yourselves. The trial of form will determine whether your bodies and souls can withstand the transformation required to interface with Draknari technology." Rodriguez studied the structure with an engineer's eye for detail. "What happens if someone fails one of the trials?" "Failure results in dissolution," Thyraxis replied matter-of-factly. "Your consciousness will be absorbed into the planetary network to serve as processing power for the Guardian systems. It is not death, precisely, but it is the end of individual existence as you understand it." Vasquez's hand instinctively moved toward where her sidearm would normally rest, though she had left all weapons aboard the shuttle. "And if we all succeed? What guarantee do we have that the transformation won't simply make us servants of your agenda?" The keeper's expression showed what might have been amusement. "There is no agenda save the preservation of knowledge and the testing of worthiness. The Draknari learned through bitter experience that power without wisdom leads only to destruction. These trials were designed to ensure that only those capable of bearing such responsibility would gain access to our inheritance." Behind Thyraxis, the entrance to the sanctum began to open with a deep, resonant hum that Chen could feel through the soles of her feet. The opening revealed a corridor that seemed to extend far beyond what the structure's external dimension should have allowed, its walls covered in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Before you enter," Thyraxis continued, "you should know that the trials will not only test you as individuals but as representatives of your species. The Draknari technology you seek to claim was designed for beings who thought in terms of geological timescales and considered the welfare of entire galactic regions in their decision-making. You will need to prove that humanity possesses the maturity to wield such power responsibly." Chen felt a chill that had nothing to do with Vaelthera's thin atmosphere. The weight of their civilization's future pressed down on her with crushing force. "How many species have attempted these trials before?" 47, Thyraxis replied without hesitation. 12 succeeded in completing all 3 trials. Of those, 7 chose to reject the inheritance after witnessing its true scope. 3 accepted the power but used it unwisely, leading to the destruction of their civilizations within 1,000 years. Only 2 species have successfully integrated Draknari technology into their cultures and survived to become beneficial forces in the galaxy. The odds were sobering, but Chen had not come this far to turn back at the threshold of discovery. She looked to her companions and saw her own determination reflected in their faces. They had made their choice, and now they would see it through to whatever end awaited them. "We're ready," she said firmly. Thyraxis nodded and gestured toward the open portal. "Then, enter, children of distant stars, and discover whether your kind has the strength to claim the inheritance of dragons." The corridor beyond the entrance was unlike anything Chen had ever experienced. The walls seemed to shift and flow around them as they walked, covered in symbols that rearranged themselves in response to their presence. The air itself hummed with energy that made their environmental suit sensors struggle to maintain accurate readings. "The architecture here is impossible," Rodriguez muttered, running his hands along a wall that felt solid but looked translucent. "These passages are definitely larger inside than the external structure should allow. They're manipulating spacetime to create expanded interior dimensions." "Focus on the mission," Vasquez reminded them, though her own voice carried notes of wonder and unease. Whatever technology they're using, we need to prove ourselves worthy of it first. They walked for what felt like hours through corridors that branched and converged in patterns that defied three-dimensional logic. Occasionally they passed chambers filled with machinery that operated according to principles that human science couldn't begin to explain. In one room, massive crystalline matrices processed streams of pure information at speeds that made their neural networks seem glacially slow. In another, fields of controlled gravity maintained perfect spheres of liquid starlight that pulsed with their own inner rhythms. Eventually, they reached a vast circular chamber where the corridor terminated. The space was dominated by three archways, each leading to passages that seemed to fade into different colored mists. Above each archway hung symbols that shifted and changed, but somehow Chun found herself able to understand their meaning. The left archway bore symbols representing knowledge, logic, and the pursuit of truth. The middle archway displayed images of sacrifice, dedication, and the bonds between individuals. The right archway showed transformation, adaptation, and the bridge between what was and what could be. The three trials, Chen breathed, understanding flooding through her mind. The fragment around her neck pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, and she realized that its proximity to the sanctum systems was creating a limited connection between her consciousness and the vast network that governed this place. Which do we attempt first? Rodriguez asked, studying the archways with professional interest. It doesn't matter, Vasquez replied, her tactical training evident in her analysis of the situation. We'll need to complete all three regardless. The question is whether we do them together or separately. As if in response to her words, barriers of shimmering energy appeared between the three archways, clearly indicating that each trial would need to be faced alone. The implications were clear, they would be separated, each facing their own test with no support from their companions. Chen felt a moment of panic at the thought of being separated from Rodriguez and Vasquez. They had faced the unknown together up to this point, drawing strength from their shared purpose and mutual support. Now each of them would have to prove their individual worth to claim humanity's inheritance. Whatever happens in there, Rodriguez said quietly, remember that we're doing this for everyone back home. Every human who ever looked up at the stars and wondered what was waiting for us out here. Vasquez nodded grimly. If we fail, make sure the failure means something. Gather whatever information you can so that others might succeed where we did not. Chen touched the fragment through her suit, drawing comfort from its warm presence. We won't fail. We can't fail. Too much depends on us succeeding. They approached the archways together, each drawn toward the trial that seemed to call most strongly to their individual strengths. Chen found herself walking toward the left archway and the trial of mind, while Rodriguez moved toward the center and the trial of spirit. Vasquez headed for the right archway and what Chen now understood was the trial of form. At the threshold of her chosen trial, Chen paused and looked back at her companions. Rodriguez was adjusting his equipment with the methodical precision that had made him one of the best engineers in the fleet, while Vasquez was performing the mental preparation rituals that preceded any dangerous mission. See you on the other side, Chen called out, hoping her voice carried more confidence than she felt. Count on it, Rodriguez replied with a grin that didn't quite hide his nervousness. Vasquez simply nodded, her expression set in the calm determination that had carried her through countless combat situations. Then, Chen stepped through the archway and into the colored mist beyond, leaving her companions behind as she faced the first test that would determine humanity's future among the stars. The mist swirled around her, and she felt her consciousness expanding in ways that human neurology should not have been able to accommodate. Behind her, the archways sealed themselves with barriers of solid energy, ensuring that each of them would face their trials alone. The sanctum had awakened fully now, its systems drawing on power sources that had slumbered for millennia. Whatever happened in the next few hours would either elevate humanity to unimaginable heights or end in their complete dissolution. The transformation of three human beings was about to begin. Dr. Sarah Chen emerged from the swirling mist to find herself standing in a space that challenged every assumption she had about the nature of reality. The trial of mind had transported her to what appeared to be a vast library, but the books that lined its endless shelves were composed of crystallized thought rather than paper and ink. Each tome pulsed with inner light, and, when she approached one, information flowed directly into her consciousness without the need for reading. The knowledge contained within these volumes was staggering in its scope and complexity. Here were the accumulated scientific discoveries of civilizations spanning millions of years, mathematical proofs that revealed the underlying structure of the universe, and philosophical insights that addressed questions humanity had barely learned to ask. Chen found herself overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of what was being presented to her. Impressive, is it not? The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, carrying harmonics that suggested vast intelligence operating on multiple dimensional levels simultaneously. This represents the combined intellectual achievement of 47 different species, including my own Draknari masters. Chen spun around, looking for the source of the voice, but found herself alone among the crystalline shelves. Who are you? Are you one of the trial guardians? I am what you might call the curator, the voice replied, taking on a more familiar tone that somehow reminded Chen of her old professors back on Earth. My function is to oversee the trial of mind and determine whether your species possesses the intellectual capacity to wield Draknari technology responsibly. A section of the library rearranged itself around Chen, shelves sliding away to reveal a circular chamber containing what appeared to be a three-dimensional holographic puzzle of impossible complexity. The construct floated in the center of the room, its components shifting and rotating through patterns that hurt to observe directly. Your first challenge, the curator explained, is to solve the axiom engine. This device was created by the Draknari as a test of logical reasoning and spatial comprehension. Every species that has successfully passed the trial of mind has solved it using their own unique approach. The solution reveals fundamental truths about how your kind processes information and makes decisions. Chen approached the floating puzzle cautiously, her scientific training automatically cataloging its various components. The construct appeared to be composed of interlocking geometric shapes that existed in at least 7 dimensions, possibly more. As she watched, pieces of the puzzle phased in and out of visible reality, following patterns that seemed chaotic but must contain some underlying logic. What happens if I fail to solve it? She asked, extending her consciousness toward the device as the fragment around her neck began to resonate with its energy patterns. Then, your mind will be absorbed into the collective intellect that powers this facility, the curator replied matter-of-factly. Your individual consciousness will cease to exist, but your knowledge and experience will contribute to our understanding of how lesser species think. Chen felt a chill of fear, but pushed it aside. She had not come this far to be intimidated by the stakes involved. Instead, she focused her attention on the puzzle, allowing her enhanced consciousness to examine its structure from multiple angles simultaneously. The key, she realized, was not to think of it as a static object but as a dynamic system. Each component was connected to every other component through quantum entanglement fields that operated across multiple dimensional planes. By adjusting one piece, she could influence the behavior of the entire construct, but only if she understood the underlying mathematical relationships that governed its operation. Hours passed as Chen worked, her mind stretching to accommodate concepts that human mathematics had never conceived. The fragment around her neck grew warmer, its resonance helping her maintain the expanded consciousness necessary to perceive the puzzle's true nature. Gradually, patterns began to emerge from what had initially appeared to be chaos. Meanwhile, Chief Engineer Miguel Rodriguez found himself in a very different environment as he began the trial of spirit. The mist had deposited him in what appeared to be a recreation of his childhood home in Mexico, complete with the sounds and smells he remembered from his youth. His mother stood in the kitchen preparing dinner, just as she had every evening when he was growing up. Nijo, she called out in Spanish, her voice exactly as he remembered it. Come help your mama with the cooking. Rodriguez knew this couldn't be real, his mother had died 5 years earlier, but the emotional impact was overwhelming nonetheless. He approached her cautiously, noting that she appeared younger than she had been when he left home to join the fleet, closer to the age she had been during his happiest childhood memories. You are not my mother, he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion despite his logical certainty that this was some kind of test. The figure turned to face him, and Rodriguez gasped. It was indeed his mother, but her eyes held depths of wisdom and sadness that spoke of cosmic awareness. No, child, I am not. I am the embodiment of everything you have sacrificed in your pursuit of knowledge and advancement. I am the guardian of loss, and my purpose is to determine whether your dedication to progress is worth the price your choices have demanded. The kitchen around them flickered and changed, showing Rodriguez scenes from his life played out in vivid detail. Here was his graduation from engineering school, where his mother had beamed with pride despite not understanding the technical complexities of his achievements. There was the day he had left Earth to join the deep space exploration program, crushing his mother's hopes that he would settle down and give her grandchildren. "Look upon what you have chosen," the Guardian continued, her voice carrying the weight of infinite sorrow. "You have spent your life reaching for the stars while those who loved you grew old and died in your absence. Now you propose to sacrifice even your humanity itself for the sake of technology and power. Tell me, child, what makes such dedication meaningful rather than merely selfish?" Rodriguez felt the weight of every choice he had ever made pressing down on him like a physical force. It was true that his pursuit of engineering excellence had cost him relationships, family connections, and the simple pleasures of a quiet life. But he had always believed that advancing human knowledge and capability was worth any personal sacrifice. "My mother understood why I had to leave," he said firmly, though his voice shook with emotion. "She raised me to believe that we have a responsibility to make the world better than we found it. Every ship I've designed, every system I've improved, has made life safer and better for millions of people." "And, now," the Guardian pressed, "what justification do you offer for abandoning your humanity entirely?" Rodriguez thought of the crew aboard the Prometheus, of the billions of humans spreading across the galaxy in ships that relied on technology barely adequate for the challenges they faced. He thought of the energy crises that threatened entire colonies, the resource wars that pitted human settlements against each other, and the constant fear of encountering hostile alien civilizations with superior technology. "Because humanity needs guardians," he replied, his conviction growing stronger. "Because the galaxy is vast and dangerous, and we are still children playing with toys. If I can become something that bridges the gap between what we are and what we need to be, then the sacrifice has meaning." Simultaneously, Commander Elena Vasquez was facing her own challenge in the trial of form. The mist had brought her to what appeared to be a medical facility unlike anything in human experience. The walls were lined with tanks containing what looked like failed experiments in biological modification, creatures that had once been recognizable as various species but had been transformed into something alien and disturbing. "Welcome, warrior," a voice greeted her from the shadows. The speaker emerged as a figure that had once been humanoid but now bore the characteristics of multiple species merged together in ways that should have been impossible. Its skin was scaled like a reptile, but it had mammalian features and appendages that seemed borrowed from aquatic species. "I am the master of changes," the creature continued, its voice a harmony of different vocal patterns that suggested multiple consciousness merged into one. "These failures you see around us represent those who sought transformation without understanding the price. They wanted power without sacrifice, strength without wisdom. They became monsters instead of bridges." Vasquez studied the specimens with the clinical detachment that had served her well in countless combat situations. "What exactly does the trial of form require?" "You must choose the nature of your transformation," the master replied, gesturing toward 3 alcoves that had appeared in the chamber walls. Each alcove contained a different version of what Vasquez realized was herself, but changed, enhanced, adapted for different purposes. The first alcove showed her with reptilian features similar to the Draknari, her skin covered in scales that seemed to shift through different defensive configurations. This version radiated physical power and resilience, clearly designed for combat and protection. The second alcove displayed a version of herself that had been modified for enhanced mental capabilities. Her skull was enlarged to accommodate an expanded brain, and her eyes had been replaced with crystalline sensors that could perceive across multiple spectrums. This variant was obviously intended for intellectual and sensory enhancement. The third alcove contained the most disturbing transformation, a version of herself that appeared almost mechanical, with synthetic components integrated seamlessly into biological tissue. This hybrid form suggested capabilities that transcended the limitations of purely organic life. Each transformation offers different advantages, the master explained, but also different limitations. The warrior form grants physical supremacy but limits intellectual growth. The scholar form expands mental capacity but weakens the body. The hybrid form transcends both limitations but sacrifices the essential humanity that connects you to your species. Vasquez approached each alcove in turn, studying the transformed versions of herself with growing understanding. This was not simply about choosing enhanced capabilities, it was about deciding what aspects of humanity were essential to preserve and what could be sacrificed for the greater good. What if I refuse all three options? She asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Then, you fail the trial and your consciousness joins the collective intelligence that maintains this facility, the master replied. The transformation is not optional for those who would claim the inheritance of the Draknari. The question is not whether you will change, but how you will choose to change. Back in the trial of mind, Shen finally began to perceive the solution to the axiom engine. The key was not to solve the puzzle in the traditional sense, but to recognize that it was actually a representation of consciousness itself, a multidimensional model of how awareness operated across different levels of reality. Instead of trying to rearrange the components into some predetermined pattern, Shen began to interface with the construct directly, allowing her consciousness to merge with its quantum field structures. The fragment around her neck blazed with light as it facilitated the connection, and, suddenly, she understood. The puzzle was not meant to be solved, it was meant to be experienced. Each component represented a different aspect of conscious thought: logic, intuition, memory, creativity, analysis, and synthesis. The challenge was not to arrange them in the correct order, but to demonstrate that human consciousness could integrate all these elements into a coherent whole while maintaining individual identity. Fascinating, the curator observed as Chen's mind expanded to encompass the full scope of the axiom engine. Your species approaches the problem through synthesis rather than reduction. Most civilizations attempt to dominate the construct through force of logic. You seek to understand and integrate it. Chen felt her consciousness stretching across multiple dimensional planes as she absorbed the lessons embedded within the puzzle. She could perceive the vast network of intelligence that governed Vailthara, the accumulated wisdom of 47 different species all working together to preserve knowledge and test worthiness. The Draknari believed that true intelligence required the ability to think beyond the limitations of individual perspective, the curator continued. You have demonstrated that humanity possesses this capability. You may proceed to the integration chamber. The library around Chen dissolved into streams of light that coalesced into a circular room containing a single chair surrounded by crystalline interface arrays. She understood instinctively that sitting in that chair would begin the process of permanent transformation, connecting her consciousness to the Draknari technological network in ways that could never be undone. But, first, she needed to know that her companions had also succeeded in their trials. The fate of humanity depended not on individual success, but on their ability to work together as enhanced beings who could bridge the gap between human and Draknari civilizations. In the trial of spirit, Rodriguez had reached a similar moment of decision. The Guardian of Loss had shown him visions of every possible future that could result from humanity gaining access to Draknari technology. Some timelines led to unprecedented prosperity and expansion across the galaxy. Others ended in destruction as humans proved incapable of wielding such power responsibly. The choice is yours, the Guardian said, her appearance now shifting between his mother and the countless other beings whose sacrifices had made progress possible. You can turn back now and return to your ship with the knowledge that you tried but were not ready. Or you can proceed with the transformation, knowing that you will become something new and unknown, a guardian of power that could either save or damn your species. Rodriguez thought of the fragment Chen carried, of the incredible potential it represented, and of the responsibility they all bore to use any power they gained for the benefit of humanity as a whole. I choose transformation, he said firmly. I choose to become whatever my people need me to become. The chamber around him faded to be replaced by an identical integration room, complete with interface chair and crystalline arrays that hummed with barely contained power. In the trial of form, Vasquez had reached her own moment of truth. After studying all three transformation options, she had realized that the choice itself was another test. The Master of Changes was not simply offering her different types of enhancement, he was determining whether she could think beyond the limitations of the options presented. I choose synthesis, she announced, her military training having taught her to look for solutions that others might miss. Not one of these three forms, but aspects of all three integrated into something new. If I'm going to become a bridge between human and Draknari civilizations, then I need capabilities that serve both sides. The Master of Changes smiled, an expression that looked disturbing on his transformed features but somehow conveyed approval. Wisdom beyond your years, young warrior. You understand that true strength lies not in choosing the most powerful option, but in choosing the most appropriate one. Very few candidates recognize that the trial allows for custom solutions. Vasquez found herself in her own integration chamber, facing the same choice that Chen and Rodriguez were confronting. The crystalline interfaces beckoned to her, promising transformation beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. All she had to do was sit down and allow the process to begin. But she hesitated, not from fear but from the weight of responsibility. Once they underwent the transformation, there would be no going back. They would become something new, something unprecedented in galactic history, humans who had been reborn as guardians of Draknari technology. In the end, the choice was simple. Humanity needed protectors who could stand equal to any challenge the galaxy might present. If that required them to sacrifice their original forms and become something greater, then that was a price worth paying. 3 chairs. 3 choices. 3 humans standing at the threshold of transformation that would determine the future of their entire species. The next phase of their journey was about to begin. The moment Dr. Sarah Chen settled into the crystalline interface chair, reality exploded into cascades of sensation that no human nervous system was designed to process. The fragment around her neck blazed with intensity that would have been blinding if she had still been perceiving light through ordinary human eyes. Instead, her consciousness expanded across spectrums of existence that included not just electromagnetic radiation but quantum fluctuations, dimensional resonances, and patterns of information flow that connected every atom in the galaxy. Pain was too simple a word for what she experienced. Her body was being systematically deconstructed and rebuilt at the cellular level while her mind was simultaneously connected to technological systems that operated on principles beyond human comprehension. The crystalline arrays surrounding her chair hummed with power drawn from the planet's core, channeling energies that could have powered human civilization for millennia into the delicate process of transformation. Through the overwhelming sensory input, Chen became aware of her companions undergoing similar changes in their own chambers. Rodriguez's transformation was focused on integration with mechanical systems, his nervous system being rewired to interface directly with technology through quantum entanglement fields. She could sense his consciousness expanding as his brain was enhanced with crystalline implants that would allow him to think at computational speeds while maintaining his essential humanity. Vasquez's change was perhaps the most complex of the 3. Her choice to synthesize aspects of all the offered transformations had created a unique challenge for the Draknari systems. Her body was being rebuilt to combine physical enhancement, intellectual expansion, and technological integration in ways that had never been attempted before. The process was taking longer than the others, requiring constant adjustments as the transformation systems learned to accommodate her unprecedented requirements. Hours passed, or perhaps days. Time had lost meaning in the depths of transformation. Chen's consciousness drifted through layers of reality that human philosophy had never imagined. She experienced the memories and knowledge of countless Draknari who had undergone similar changes over the millennia, learning through direct neural transfer what it meant to bear the responsibility of cosmic scale power. The Draknari, she discovered, had not been the godlike beings that legends portrayed. They had been explorers much like humanity, driven by curiosity and the desire to understand their place in the universe. Their technology had been developed over millions of years through painstaking research and countless failures. What made them remarkable was not their individual capabilities, but their commitment to preserving knowledge and ensuring that younger species could learn from their achievements without having to repeat their mistakes. The transformation is nearly complete, announced a voice that Chen recognized as Keeper Thyraxis, though she was no longer hearing it through her ears but through direct neural interface. Your physical forms have been successfully integrated with Draknari biotechnology. Your consciousness has been expanded to interface with our planetary networks. The final phase will determine whether you retain enough of your original humanity to serve as bridges between civilizations. Chen tried to speak but found that she no longer possessed vocal cords in any recognizable sense. Instead, her thoughts projected directly into the communication network that connected all 3 transformation chambers. What do you mean by the final phase? You must learn to use your new capabilities while maintaining the perspective and values that define your species, Thyraxis explained. Many beings who undergo this transformation become so overwhelmed by their enhanced abilities that they lose sight of their original purposes. They become servants of power rather than guardians of wisdom. The crystalline arrays around Chen's chair began to reconfigure themselves, creating holographic displays that showed the current state of human space. She could see the Prometheus orbiting above them, but also the entire network of human colonies and installations spread across dozens of star systems. Her enhanced perception allowed her to analyze everything from resource distribution patterns to the psychological profiles of individual colonists. Your first test, Thyraxis continued, is to use your new abilities to solve a crisis that threatens your species. 3 days ago, a massive solar flare disrupted communications throughout the Centauri sector. 17 human colonies have been cut off from all contact with Earth or the fleet. Without immediate assistance, they will face critical shortages of essential supplies within the next 72 hours. Chen's enhanced consciousness immediately began processing the available data, calculating optimal solutions with speed and precision that would have been impossible with her original human brain. She could perceive the exact nature of the solar disruption, track the movements of every ship in the affected region, and analyze resource requirements down to the individual component level. But, as she began formulating a response plan, she realized that the technical solution was only part of the challenge. The real test was whether she could maintain her human empathy and moral judgment while wielding capabilities that made her godlike by the standards of her original species. Rodriguez, Vasquez, she projected to her companions, "Are you receiving this?" Loud and clear, Rodriguez responded, his mental voice carrying harmonics that suggested his consciousness was now operating on multiple levels simultaneously. "I can see the technical challenges involved in re-establishing communications across the affected systems. The solar radiation has created quantum interference patterns that will require real-time adjustment of transmission frequencies. The logistics are complex but manageable," Vasquez added, her enhanced tactical awareness already mapping out deployment strategies. "We have 12 ships in nearby systems that could reach the affected colonies within 48 hours if properly coordinated. The key will be maintaining security while conducting relief operations." Chen felt a surge of relief at discovering that her companions retained their essential personalities despite their transformations. Rodriguez was still focused on technical solutions, while Vasquez continued to think in terms of operational logistics and security concerns. They had become more than human, but they were still recognizably themselves. "The question," Chen mused, "is how we implement these solutions without revealing the extent of our capabilities. If we suddenly demonstrate the ability to coordinate multi-system relief operations with perfect efficiency, people will start asking questions we're not ready to answer." This was the real test, she realized. It wasn't enough to have the power to solve humanity's problems, they needed to use that power in ways that wouldn't disrupt the social and political structures that held human civilization together. They had to be subtle, working behind the scenes to guide events rather than dominating them through displays of superior capability. "I suggest we work through existing command structures," Vasquez proposed. "I can use my enhanced tactical analysis to identify optimal solutions, then feed them to fleet commanders as strategic recommendations. Rodriguez can provide technical innovations that appear to be natural developments rather than miraculous breakthroughs. And I can use the historical databases I now have access to predict potential complications and prepare contingency plans," Chen added. "But we need to be careful not to prevent humanity from learning and growing through their own efforts. Our role should be to prevent disasters, not to eliminate challenges entirely." Their conversation was interrupted by the appearance of Thyraxis, who materialized in the chamber as a shimmering projection of light and energy. The keeper's form had changed subtly, becoming less reptilian and more abstract, as if he were gradually transcending the need for physical existence entirely. "You understand the nature of your burden," he observed with approval. "Power without restraint corrupts absolutely, while power exercised with wisdom and humility can elevate entire civilizations. You have passed the first test of your transformation." The chamber around them began to dissolve, revealing the true scope of the sanctum's interior. They were no longer in separate rooms but standing together in a vast space that seemed to extend infinitely in all directions. The walls were covered in displays showing the status of technological systems spanning the entire galaxy, while streams of information flowed like rivers of light between massive computational nodes. Chen looked down at her hands and gasped at what she saw. Her skin had taken on a subtle scaled texture that caught and reflected light in patterns that seemed almost hypnotic. Her fingers were longer and more dexterous than they had been, capable of manipulating interfaces that operated through direct neural connection. Most dramatically, her eyes now possessed additional layers of perception that allowed her to see across multiple spectrums simultaneously. Rodriguez had undergone changes that were more obviously technological. His arms and torso bore visible integration points where crystalline implants connected his nervous system to external devices. When he gestured, streams of energy flowed from his fingertips to interface with nearby systems, allowing him to diagnose and adjust mechanical problems through direct quantum entanglement. Vasquez's transformation was the most striking of the three. Her body had been enhanced for both physical and intellectual capabilities, with subtle modifications that increased her strength and speed while crystalline neural implants expanded her cognitive capacity. Most remarkably, she seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially in the quantum dimensions that govern faster-than-light communication, allowing her to coordinate activities across interstellar distances in real time. "Behold the inheritance of the Draknari," Thyraxis announced, gesturing toward the displays that surrounded them. "Every piece of technology our civilization ever developed, every scientific discovery we ever made, every philosophical insight we ever achieved, all of this is now accessible to you and, through you, to your species." Chen felt overwhelmed by the scope of what was being offered to humanity. The databases surrounding them contained solutions to problems that human science hadn't even learned to recognize yet. Here were technologies for healing that could eliminate genetic diseases, energy systems that could power galactic civilizations, and transportation methods that would make interstellar travel as simple as walking across a room. "But, remember," Thyraxis continued, his mental voice carrying warnings that resonated through their enhanced consciousness, "this knowledge must be released gradually, as your species demonstrates the wisdom to use it responsibly. Too much too fast has destroyed more civilizations than any external threat. How do we determine the right pace?" Rodriguez asked, his engineer's instincts focused on implementation challenges. "By maintaining your connection to unenhanced humanity," Thyraxis replied. "You must continue to live among your people, to understand their hopes and fears, to experience their struggles and triumphs. Only by remaining grounded in the human experience can you guide them safely through the transformation that awaits your entire species." The implications were staggering. They weren't just being given access to Draknari technology, they were being made guardians of humanity's future development. Every decision they made about what knowledge to share and when to share it would shape the destiny of their entire civilization. "There is one final gift," Thyraxis added, producing a device that looked like a crystalline flower with petals that seemed to phase in and out of visible reality. "This is a quantum seed, a self-replicating technology that can be programmed to gradually introduce Draknari capabilities into human systems without overwhelming them. Plant this in your most advanced research facility, and it will begin the slow process of elevating your entire civilization." Chen took the device reverently, feeling its weight both physical and metaphysical. "What about you? Will you continue to watch over this place?" "My purpose nears its end," Thyraxis replied, his form beginning to fade slightly. "For 8,000 years I have maintained the sanctum and tested those who sought the Draknari inheritance. Now that humanity has proven itself worthy, I can finally rest. The responsibility passes to you and those who will come after you." The chamber around them began to change again, forming a transportation platform that would carry them back to the surface. Their transformation was complete, but their real work was just beginning. They had become something unprecedented in galactic history, humans who had been reborn as guardians of power beyond imagination. As they prepared to return to the Prometheus and their unsuspecting crew, each of them grappled with the magnitude of the changes they had undergone. They were no longer entirely human, but they were not fully Draknari either. They were something new, something unique, bridges between what humanity was and what it could become. The universe would never be the same. Neither would they. 6 months had passed since the transformation on Valthera, and the universe had indeed changed in ways both subtle and profound. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in her laboratory aboard Titan Station, humanity's most advanced research facility orbiting Saturn, watching as the quantum seed slowly worked its influence on human technology. To outside observers, the improvements seemed like natural breakthroughs, more efficient power systems, enhanced computing capabilities, and materials with properties that pushed the boundaries of known science. But Chen could perceive the true scope of the changes through her enhanced consciousness. The seed was carefully introducing Draknari principles into human engineering, upgrading systems in ways that appeared to be logical developments rather than revolutionary leaps. Fusion reactors that had previously struggled to maintain stable containment fields now operated with unprecedented efficiency. Computer networks showed processing speeds that defied previous limitations. Most importantly, human scientists were beginning to ask questions that would eventually lead them to discoveries they weren't quite ready to make on their own. Status report on the Centauri relief operation, Commander Elena Vasquez requested through their private quantum communication link. Her consciousness touched theirs across the vast distances of space, a capability that still amazed Chen despite months of experience with their enhanced abilities. Mission accomplished without revealing our involvement, Rodriguez reported from his position aboard a deep space construction platform. Fleet Command believes their improved coordination was the result of new tactical analysis software I introduced through regular channels. 17 colonies received essential supplies with 3 days to spare, and the communication networks have been fully restored using what appear to be incremental improvements to existing technology. Chen smiled at the satisfaction in Rodriguez's mental voice. Their friend had adapted to his new role with characteristic enthusiasm, using his enhanced abilities to solve engineering challenges throughout human space while maintaining the careful facade of normal technological development. His reputation as a brilliant innovator had grown significantly, but no one suspected that his innovations drew on knowledge accumulated over millions of years by one of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. Any complications we need to address? Chen asked, monitoring the data streams that flowed through her enhanced consciousness like rivers of pure information. One minor concern, Vasquez replied, her tactical awareness highlighting potential problems with the precision that had made her invaluable in her new role. Intelligence reports suggest that some of our competitors have noticed the acceleration in human technological development. The Hegemony and the Zenitha Collective have both increased their surveillance of our colonies and research facilities. This was the challenge they had anticipated. Humanity's rapid advancement would inevitably attract attention from the established galactic powers, many of whom had spent millennia maintaining their dominance through technological superiority. The last thing any of them wanted was for humans to suddenly emerge as equals in the cosmic arena. Chen accessed the intelligence databases through her neural interfaces, analyzing threat assessments with capabilities that would have required entire teams of analysts using conventional methods. The Hegemony is particularly concerned about our improvements in quantum field manipulation. They're planning to send a diplomatic mission to Earth next month, ostensibly to discuss trade agreements but actually to gather intelligence on our technological capabilities. And the Zenithu? Rodriguez asked, his consciousness briefly touching the construction facility's sensor arrays to monitor for any signs of surveillance. More direct action, Vasquez reported grimly. 3 of their stealth scouts have been detected in the outer system using sensors that shouldn't exist yet according to their intelligence estimates. They're trying to determine if we've made contact with a previously unknown technological source. Chen felt a chill of concern. The Zenitha Collective was known for their aggressive expansion policies and their willingness to eliminate potential threats before they could become actual challenges. If they suspected that humanity had gained access to advanced alien technology, they might decide that preemptive action was necessary. We need to be more careful, she concluded. The integration process needs to slow down until we can develop countermeasures for this kind of scrutiny. Actually, Rodriguez interjected, I have a better idea. What if we give them something to find that explains our technological advancement without revealing the truth? Chen felt her enhanced consciousness engaging with the problem, processing possibilities at speeds that would have been impossible with her original human brain. Elaborate. We create evidence of a fictional discovery, Rodriguez explained, his engineer's mind working through the details. Something impressive enough to explain our recent advances but not so remarkable that it attracts even more attention. A lost cache of technology from some extinct civilization, perhaps, or a breakthrough in theoretical physics that opened new avenues of research. Vasquez's tactical analysis capabilities immediately began evaluating the proposal. It could work, but we'd need to be incredibly careful about the details. Any inconsistencies would be detected by advanced intelligence services, and that would raise even more questions than our current situation. I can help with that, Chen realized, accessing the vast historical databases that came with her transformation. The Draknari archives contain records of dozens of extinct civilizations whose technology was impressive but not overwhelming. We could discover the ruins of the Canthari, who developed advanced materials science before their star went supernova 12,000 years ago. The plan began to take shape as their enhanced minds worked through the implications and requirements. They would need to create physical evidence, plant it in a location where human exploration teams would naturally discover it, and ensure that the technology found there was consistent with the improvements they had been introducing through the quantum seed. There's an uninhabited system about 40 light-years from here that would be perfect, Rodriguez noted, accessing stellar cartography data through his neural links. It's on the edge of human exploration range, and the third planet shows signs of having once supported life. We could construct Canthary ruins that would withstand detailed archaeological examination. I can handle the military aspects, Vasquez added. My current assignment gives me access to exploration mission schedules. I can ensure that the discovery happens naturally without appearing to be staged. Chen felt a moment of uncertainty about the deception they were contemplating. They were essentially lying to their entire species about the source of their technological advancement. But the alternative, revealing that 3 humans had been transformed into something beyond baseline humanity, would likely cause panic and political chaos that could set back human development for decades. Keeper Thyraxis warned us about this, she reminded her companions. He said that managing the release of advanced knowledge was one of the most difficult aspects of our new role. Too much truth too fast can be as destructive as lies. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent alert from the quantum communication network that connected them to monitoring stations throughout human space. Chen's enhanced perception immediately identified the source of the alarm: multiple hyperspace signatures appearing simultaneously in 3 different star systems, all of them bearing the energy characteristics of hegemony warships. This is more than a diplomatic mission, Vasquez observed, her consciousness analyzing the tactical implications at superhuman speed. They're deploying battle fleets to multiple strategic positions around human space. This looks like the preparation for a blockade or invasion. Rodriguez's engineering capabilities immediately began calculating response options. Our current fleet wouldn't stand a chance against hegemony technology. Their ships are at least 2 centuries ahead of anything we can field conventionally. Chen felt the weight of their responsibility settling on her shoulders like a physical force. They had the knowledge and capability to defend humanity using Draknari technology, but doing so would reveal their transformation and likely trigger an arms race that could destabilize the entire galaxy. We need options that don't require revealing our true capabilities, she concluded, though part of her wondered if such options even existed. Actually, Vasquez said slowly, there might be a way. The hegemony's tactical doctrine assumes they're dealing with conventional human military capabilities. What if we use that assumption against them? Explain, Rodriguez requested, his consciousness touching the construction facility's manufacturing systems as he began calculating production possibilities. We've been introducing technological improvements gradually through normal channels, Vasquez continued, her strategic analysis capabilities working through multiple scenarios simultaneously. What if we accelerate that process dramatically, but only for military applications? We could provide fleet commanders with upgrades that appear to be desperate emergency measures developed under pressure. Chen saw the brilliance of the approach immediately. Enhanced shields that seem like improved power distribution, weapons with better targeting that appear to be software upgrades, faster than light communication that looks like refinements to existing quantum entanglement technology. The key would be making the improvements appear incremental even though they're actually revolutionary, Rodriguez agreed. I can work with fleet engineering teams to implement changes that solve their immediate tactical problems without revealing the underlying principles involved. Their enhanced consciousnesses worked together to develop the plan, processing variables and contingencies at speeds that would have required weeks of conventional analysis. Within minutes, they had outlined a comprehensive strategy for defending humanity without revealing their transformation or the true source of their capabilities. There's one more factor we need to consider, Chen added, accessing intelligence reports through her neural links. The Zenitha Collective isn't just watching, they're positioning themselves to take advantage of any conflict between humanity and the hegemony. If we manage to repel the hegemony forces, we'll likely face Zenithu intervention immediately afterward. Then, we need to plan for that too, Vasquez concluded. We can't just win one battle, we need to establish humanity as a power that's too costly to challenge directly. The magnitude of their undertaking was staggering. They were essentially engineering humanity's emergence as a major galactic civilization while maintaining the illusion that such development was natural and gradual. One mistake could expose their true nature and trigger consequences they couldn't predict. But, as Chen looked out through the laboratory's viewports at the bustling activity of Titan Station, she felt a surge of determination. Humanity deserved the chance to take its place among the stars as equals rather than subjects. The knowledge and capabilities they had gained came with the responsibility to guide their species through the challenges that awaited them. Initiating Phase 1, Rodriguez reported, his consciousness interfacing with manufacturing systems across human space. Emergency military upgrades are being distributed through normal command channels. Fleet commanders will receive them as responses to the current crisis. Phase 2 beginning now, Vasquez added, her awareness touching communication networks that connected every human military installation. Strategic deployments are being coordinated to maximize the effectiveness of the technological improvements while maintaining the appearance of conventional tactics. Chen accessed the Quantum Seed's control systems and began accelerating its influence on human research facilities. Phase 3 is active. Scientific breakthroughs that would normally take months are being compressed into days through carefully orchestrated discoveries. Across human space, the effects began to manifest almost immediately. Warships that had been barely adequate for defending against pirates suddenly found themselves equipped with shields that could deflect capital ship weapons. Targeting systems that had struggled to hit maneuvering fighters now tracked targets with impossible precision. Most importantly, fleet commanders began receiving tactical intelligence with accuracy and detail that seemed almost supernatural. The hegemony forces, expecting to face primitive human resistance, found themselves confronting an adversary